Mr. Cole is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I've got three things I want to cover, Mr. Director, but the first one is just for the record, so to speak. You were the Secretary of HUD when tornadoes ravaged Oklahoma, and particularly my hometown, in May of 2013. I want to personally thank you and HUD for the tremendous job you did in responding and continue to respond and helped us recover. Through you, obviously, I want to thank the administration, the President. You guys were simply magnificent in that. It ought to be noted, and we don't forget it in my home. So just thank you very much for your service in that critical period. It made a big difference to a lot of people's lives in my district. So
it's very generous of you.
Thank you,
Congressman.
Second is just really for the record, and this is to focus your attention on something you haven't done this yet in your official capacity, but I just would ask, there's been significant bipartisan concerns have been raised with respect to the ERISA fiduciary rule that DOL will soon repropose. So all I would ask is, would you commit to a full review and economic analysis of the impacts of that rule to ensure that these bipartisan concerns have been addressed?
Absolutely, and I think, Congressman, I don't have any specifics about release of that rule, but I think when you do see it, you'll see that we really have listened to concerns from the first time it's proposed.
I
and made some
appreciate that.
changes.
Again, I'm not asking for any early. I just want to make sure it is extraordinarily important, as you know, to a lot of folks. So I appreciate you giving it a lot of attention. Now I want to move back to a couple of items in the budget and discuss that with you. You know, in a previous budget that the President proposed, he had something where it's actually sort of bipartisan support for change CPI and means testing for certain entitlement benefits, and it saved hundreds of millions of dollars. That's not in this particular budget as I read it, is it?
That's correct.
Does the fact, and I'm not trying to trap you, but Secretary then Director, now Secretary Burwell, when she was here, said, when it wasn't in her budget, she said, that doesn't mean it's off the table. We might engage in some negotiation at some point where those things would be acceptable. Is that still the administration position, that while it's not in your budget, it's not something you would rule out if we were in a meaningful discussion about how to find a compromise?
Obviously, as you said, I can't get into specific negotiations here. I think the way that I would frame this is that when it was proposed, I think the President made clear that he was hoping to reach a broader agreement, a so-called grand bargain, and had offered what he thought was not necessarily the best policy, but was doing it in the spirit of trying to get to that agreement. And I would say we continue to have concerns about it. Those concerns have always been there. But I think it's also fair to say, as Director Burwell, now Secretary Burwell, said last year, that we are willing to enter into negotiations and to look at some hard things. We look forward to conversations going forward. I think particularly the things in the budget, though, are the things that we want to focus on in those negotiations, building on the Murray-Ryan precedent.
Fair enough. I'm going to take that as a long yes. But fair enough, with all the qualifiers. Another question, and just really a philosophical question. Do you think the budget can ever be balanced without meaningfully addressing the entitlement spending? We all know around this table we've actually cut discretionary spending, $165 billion. Been bipartisan agreement to get that done since President Bush was in office. That's pretty substantial reductions, causes a lot of concern around the table in a variety of areas. But the area that keeps growing is the mandatory spending, entitlement spending, whatever title you want to use. Is there any way to actually balance the budget without coming to some sort of broader agreement to rein in or slow down that spending? Not necessarily cut, but reduce and slow down the pace of growth.
Well, I think we were just talking about Social Security. I'd be even more specific. Social Security is not one of the primary drivers at this point of deficit and debts. It really is healthcare costs. That is the key thing, along with our demographic challenges in the long term going forward. And so I agree with you that we need to take those on. I would say we have, and particularly in the work that we've done through the Affordable Care Act and elsewhere, to lower healthcare cost growth. The proposals we have in the budget, SGR fix and a range of others on delivery system reform that would go farther on that, and comprehensive immigration reform, we think are the most important things we can do on that front.
Thank you. I see my time has
Gentlemen.
expired, so I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. Thank you. The gentlelady from Michigan, Ms. Dingell, is recognized.